Organizations and companies that scale for a very long time and stay relevant for a very long time understand the art of replacement game. Now, what do I mean by the replacement game? Look, the Lakers had to find a way to replace Kobe because they were irrelevant for 3 years ever since he retired, and they brought LeBron James, right? You look at college football teams. I had people earlier here from Omaha, Nebraska talking about the last time we were relevant was what? 1997, because they made a mistake on the replacement game. This is the point to you here. As important as you and I think we are, as important as we think, oh my gosh, I am so important because without me, nothing would ever happen, that's when the value of a company stays small. Microsoft CEO and founder Bill Gates realized June 27 of 2008 that he needed to be replaced, and he stepped down as a CEO, and new CEOs came up, and Microsoft about to be the number 3 trillion-dollar company ever. So today in this episode, we're going to talk about the replacement game. Look, one of the hardest things I had to overcome as a founder and a CEO was the fact that, Pat, the more you matter, the less the company's worth. Let me say this one more time. The more I matter, the less your company's worth. So if you matter this much, the company's value is here. If you matter less, the company's value is here. Why? Because you've replaced yourself. Look, the system in America and many other countries is presidents get replaced. If I were to ask you right now, tell me who was the first president in the history of America. You may say George Washington. Now, what if I ask you who was the 7th? You're stuck. What if I tell you 16th? Abraham Lincoln. Who was the 19th? I don't know. What's the point? The 19th president mattered during that time. But the most important president in America today is the one that's the current president, which is Trump. Prior to him was Obama. Prior to him is, you get the idea. Everything that grows must be in replacement. This is scientific. Parents have kids. Kids replace parents, their legacy. The grandfathers, grandparents play the role of advisors to the parents on how to deal with their kids. And when the kids are upset at parents, they call grandparents. This is a scientific model of replacement. One day you and I are going to die, and we're going to be gone. And the only people that come to our funeral are the people that matter to us, and then it's gone. Steve Jobs died many, many years ago. Many, many years ago. Apple became a trillion-dollar company because it's a replacement game. So, the formula I'm going to give you is 6 things you need to be thinking about when it comes down to replacing yourself. Number 1. Okay, so the first thing you got to do is you got to make a list of all your tasks and skills that you have. So you say, well, I make phone calls. Well, I'm handling finances. I'm doing payroll. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing this. Which one of those tasks or skill sets are the ones that you are the best at, and which ones are not? The ones that are not, you need to replace yourself in that area and get your time focused in the areas that are your strength. The more you do things that are tasks that are not your strength, the value of the company goes lower. That is one of the things you got to do to replace yourself. Number 2, the next thing you got to do is you got to figure out the list of people that you have on your team. What is their seasons? For instance, we just hired somebody here 6 months ago. She got hired for 9 to 12 months. She knows about it. This isn't like it's going to be surprise. Surprise, you're fired. Not at all. She knew she's coming for 9 or 12 months. What's her job? Her job is to get all the protocols, procedures, systems of every single department. So she goes one by one, interviewing every single employee. We just hired 8 employees this week. She interviews every supervisor, every employee on what do you do next. So after you do this, then what do you do? 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 And she creates a stack of 100 pages of every single procedure for that department and gives it to us. That right there is worth millions of dollars to the business, because now we can have anybody that comes in and put them through the system to learn those protocols. But she knows her role is a 9 to 12 month. You may have somebody else's role, a CEO, maybe a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, maybe a CFO's role, maybe a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old to go through a part of going public, and you need to bring another person to replace that knows how to handle a bigger company. Maybe compliance, maybe a 10-year-old. But you will figure it out. And by the way, some people may do 30 years or 40 years, lifetime. But you can't assume that everybody is going to be there forever, because some seasons are different, and which ones are replaceable now. And is it a 9-month replacement, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 20, or what is it? Time it so you're never surprised when somebody needs to be replaced. Number 3. So now here's the other part. So what I just talked about with replacement is, I'm talking replacing home office staff. Let me talk about sales here. Replacing sales leaders. A great sales leader is always replacing himself or herself by replicating herself or himself with new sales leaders, okay? So for instance, I'm Mary, I develop Bobby. Bobby now learns how to sell and lead his organization of 10 salespeople in his office in Nebraska, hypothetically. He is a sales leader there. Now I have to go back and develop the next person and the next person and the next person. This could mean a call center. This could be a sales organization. This could be an online, internet, digital marketing sale. It doesn't matter. Support home office has a lifespan on how long they stay. Not always is it going to be as long as a salesperson based on a system you run. A great salesperson based on a system that lasts, that's replicatable, could last 30, 40 years, and somebody that's support maybe 6, 12 months, or maybe 2 or 3 years. Number 4, maybe you've heard the stat before that 70% of Fortune 500 companies from 1960 are no longer around. So somebody may say, well, Pat, they're no longer around because some of those products are just not being used anymore today. So they're extinct, they're gone. Fair enough. But let me make the other point to you. Some of them are not around because of the replacement game not being efficient. Here's why. Because culturally, who replaces you has to fit the culture. So for example, imagine if the organization's been built and they're used to such and such culture that you've built, based on your values, principles, all this other stuff. Then all of a sudden, somebody else comes in that doesn't fit this culture, that doesn't know what this culture is at, like a Scully. He did great at Pepsi. He didn't fit at Apple when he came through. Why? Culturally, it was not a fit. This has happened at so many different companies before. Home Depot did this as well. Culture matters so much. So when you are finding a way to replace people at higher positions of yourself, you got to make sure they have the culture down. Number 5. So remember how earlier I told you we had a lady that came on board here with us and she's only working for about 9 to 12 months and she knows about it? Do you also remember when I said what her job was to go and figure out from every single department what she needs to put together for the protocols and systems and procedures? That's exactly what you got to do with your company as well. You have to take a sheet of paper. You either hire somebody like her, which is expensive, or you do it yourself and you simply go on a board and you say, when it comes onto our sales flow, what does it look like? Actually write it out. When it comes down to incoming calls, what's the process? Front desk clerk answers, then it gets filtered to this, then we make a note on this, then in the note section you get their names, then you say this. What's the next thing you do with the script when you want to make a sales call? First you say this, like for instance, next door girl here, every time I leave, she comes and asks me questions. She sells pharmaceuticals and I ask her a question. I said, so let me ask you a question. What are the top 25 FAQs that come up when you sell your products? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, go to your sales manager and ask them, what are the frequently asked questions in your product you sell? She goes to their sales manager and she comes back to me. She says, they don't have any. I said, what kind of a sales place is this that they don't know the top 25 FAQs being asked? You got to know it. That is a flaw in their business. That doesn't replace themselves that much because it's all personality driven. Everything needs to be in a manual with step-by-step process of procedures, protocol, systems, so you can hand to somebody else and they can go do it themselves as well. And number 6. So last but not least, look, value of a company is dictated based on what kind of leaders you have. I had a staff meeting with our home office team and I said, look, who are you developing as a leader? Give me your next 3 employees that are going to become leaders in the company. And so, well, what do you mean? Who are you developing? Why? So how do you develop a leader? It's a lot of one-on-one conversations. It's a lot of private conversations. It's a lot of mindset conversations. It's a lot of processing issues conversations. It's a lot of questions back and forth. It's a lot of, pulling things out. And so what do you think about this? So how would you do this differently? And what do you think could have been over here? What could we have done better in this place? That mindset is being injected into your leaders and you're hoping they take that mindset, inject into their leaders and their leaders. And then that becomes a mindset that runs the company. That aspect of mindset replacement is another aspect of leadership development, which increases the value of your company. So now that you watch a video about replacing yourself, the next video you need to watch is the #1 video that CEOs of multi-billion dollar companies that send me emails saying this is by far the best video on valuetainment, but regular entrepreneur and salespeople don't watch this video. The title of this video is How to Strategize as an Entrepreneur.